These handwritten letters are just paper clutter, Virginia. Nicole's voice sliced through my living room like a paper cut. Nobody saves physical mail anymore. It's all taking up space and collecting dust. I sat in my recliner sorting through a shoebox of letters my late husband Frank had written me over 53 years. My house deed lay on the side table, where I'd left it after reviewing property taxes. This morning, Nicole picked up one of Frank's letters from my honeymoon pile. The ink faded but still readable. Look at this yellow paper, these old stamps. This belongs in a recycling bin, not cluttering up your living space. Those letters are from Frank, written during his business trips and military deployment, I said softly, continuing to organize letters by year and occasion. Everyone tells a story about our life together. That's exactly my problem, Nicole replied impatiently. Letters from someone who's been gone 5 years now. It's time to move forward, instead of living in the past. My son Thomas sat scrolling through his tablet, saying nothing to defend the correspondence that documents his parents' love story in careful cursive handwriting. Nicole continued flipping through letters like a postal inspector, looking for violations. These take up 3 shoeboxes of valuable storage space. You could fit so much more practical items in that closet. More practical items, as if love letters weren't practical investments in understanding how marriages survive decades of challenges and changes. Thomas finally looked up, but not in my defense. Maybe Mom could scan the important one, keep digital copies, throw away the originals. 53 years of Frank's thoughts and feelings, written by hand during lonely nights, away from home, reduced to data files. Silence isn't surrender, it's strength gathering its breath. I'm Virginia. I'm 77 years old. I live in Cedar Falls, Tennessee. These letters chronicle every separation Frank and I endured during his career, in sales and service to our country. Each envelope holds a piece of our story. Today, my daughter-in-law called, my most precious collection, paper clutter taking up space, while I sat organizing 53 years of written love in the living room where Frank used to read them back to me. But what Nicole doesn't know is this: Frank didn't just write love letters. He documented family secret in seemingly innocent correspondence. That will change everything about her assumption. If you've ever felt overlooked in your own home, you'll understand why this moment stayed with me. This house on Elm Street has stored every letter Frank ever sent me for 53 years of marriage and 5 years of treasured widowhood. When rereading his words brings him back to life for moments, the afternoon sun filtered through my living room windows, illuminating boxes of correspondence that chronicle our journey from newlyweds to grandparents through decades of shared joys and sorrows. I can smell the faint scent of Frank's cologne, still clinging to letters he wrote during our courtship, the same fragrance that filled this room when he'd come home from extended trips. My house deed sits nearby, another piece of paper. Nicole considers clutter, but documents 47 years of payments and planning that made this house our permanent sanctuary. The living room still echoes with memories of Frank reading letters aloud during our anniversary celebration, reminding us both of promises kept and love that deepened with every passing year. Some truths arrive quietly but change everything. After Frank died 5 years ago, these letters became my daily companion, a way to hear his voice again when loneliness threatened to overwhelm my heart. His words provided comfort no modern communication could replace. Nicole sees only outdated clutter taking up valuable storage space. She doesn't understand that some correspondence holds more than sentiment. It holds family documentation written between lines of romantic expression. She wants me to digitize everything meaningful, replace tangible memories with electronic files that fit her vision of efficient modern living without paper accumulation. Thomas inherited his father's practical nature but not Frank's appreciation for written communication and permanent record. He sees storage problem where his father saw legacy preservation. The suggestions started gently, like letters arriving one at a time. Nicole would comment on my excessive attachment to outdated correspondence during her weekly visit. All this paper storage must be a fire hazard. Maybe it's time to simplify your keepsakes. Keep only the most important communication. She'd point out practical concerns. These old envelopes attract insects and dust. Wouldn't digital storage be cleaner and safer For someone your age, someone my age, 77 years old, and suddenly incapable of maintaining correspondence I'd preserved successfully for over 5 decades without pest problem. Cloud storage would be better, she'd suggest. No more physical boxes taking up closet space, everything accessible on your computer or tablet device. Cloud storage, where power outages could erase Frank's words forever, where technical failures might delete decades of carefully preserved love and wisdom. Dignity whispers what anger cannot. The real campaign began when she started bringing organization magazines featuring decluttered living spaces. Look at these clean, minimalist designs, so much more peaceful than cluttered environment. She'd flip through articles about digital organization and paperless living designed for people who valued efficiency over emotional connection to physical objects. We could organize your entire house, she'd suggest. Get rid of unnecessary paper accumulation, make everything more functional for someone living alone. Unnecessary paper accumulation, as if Frank's letters were junk mail rather than love letters that documented our journey through life's challenges together. Thomas nodded along with her suggestion, not from enthusiasm, but from exhaustion, with topics that created tension every time we gathered. A home remembers the hands that built it. Nicole began questioning my reading habit. Do you really need to reread the same letters over and over? Wouldn't new books be more stimulating for your mind? New books, instead of Frank's personal thoughts and feelings, written specifically for me, during moments when distance made hearts grow fonder rather than forgotten. She suggested I donate my excess correspondence. There are historical societies that would appreciate vintage letter collections for research purposes. Missing the point entirely that these weren't historical artifacts. They were personal communication between two hearts that belonged together. Summer brought longer days and shorter patience for my letter collection. Nicole's visits became focused on eliminating what she called sentimental paper hoarding. She'd arrive with donation boxes and recycling bags. Today we tackle the letter situation, figure out what pieces have actual value and what should finally go. Actual value, as if she could determine which expressions of love deserved preservation, which moments of connection mattered enough to keep. These wartime letters especially are probably too painful to keep rereading. Wouldn't it be healthier to let go of sad memories? Sad memories. Frank's letters from Vietnam deployment. That kept our marriage strong during separation. That proved love could survive distance and dangerous circumstances. She measured my storage closets like a space planner, calculating efficiency improvements. All this area could hold practical items, things you actually need for daily living, as if reading Frank's letters wasn't part of living fully, as if love expressed in written words had no place in modern existence. Some objects hold memories, not value. I started paying attention to Nicole's real motivation behind this anti-letter campaign. She seemed determined to eliminate anything that reminded me of Frank's presence in our shared life. My house deed contained information Nicole had never bothered reading, financial details, property arrangements, important clauses that might surprise someone who assumed everything old was worthless paper, including documentation of Frank's careful planning for my financial security that he'd referenced in several letters she wanted to discard. Without reading, Frank's letters held more than romantic thoughts. They contained family information, business details, financial plans he'd outlined during travels when privacy was impossible, except through mail. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. Nicole thought I was a lonely widow, clinging to painful reminders of someone gone forever, who needed modern distractions to replace outdated sentimentality. She had no idea what Frank's letters actually contained beyond love and longing, no understanding of the practical information he'd woven throughout our correspondence. The crisis came on a humid August evening. Nicole arrived with Thomas and estimates from professional organizers for clearing out unnecessary paper collections. Professional organizer who would evaluate 53 years of written love in terms of storage, efficiency rather than emotional significance or hidden value. Mom, we've been discussing your living arrangement, Thomas said, his voice gentle but determined. This house has too much Accumulated paper for someone your age managing alone. Too much accumulated paper, as if preserving correspondence was hoarding problem rather than family archive, maintained with love and careful attention for 5 decades. These senior apartments have beautiful common areas, Nicole added. Professional activities directors you wouldn't need to maintain. Personal collections that take up valuable living space. Professional activities instead of quiet evenings, reading Frank's words about missing me during business trips, about loving me through every season of our marriage. What about Frank's letters? I asked. Our correspondence, the words he wrote, just for me, during 53 years of separation and reunion? You could keep a few special ones, Thomas said. Maybe the most romantic, for your memory box. Everything else should probably go to someone who studies history. A few special ones. How could I choose? Which expressions of love mattered most? Which promises meant more than others? Which words deserve survival? The storage requirements alone are impractical, Nicole continued. These old papers need climate control, fire protection, too much responsibility for someone your age. Stories like this remind us that clarity heals more than confrontation. Too much responsibility, as if preserving love letters was burden rather than privilege, as if maintaining Frank's words was inconvenience instead of honor. I gladly accepted. I've never found it burdensome, I protest. These letters connect me to Frank, to our life together, to the man who loved me completely. But it's not healthy to live in the past, Nicole replied. Modern widows need forward-looking activities, professional support systems that help with grief processing, professional support systems, as if Frank's love letters weren't the best therapy for missing him, as if his written promises and devotion couldn't heal my heart. That night I sat alone, reading Frank's last letter before his heart attack, where he wrote about looking forward to retirement and grandchildren and growing old together in this house. Tomorrow I would show them what they'd miss in their hurry to eliminate paper clutter, what Frank had written between lines of romantic correspondence. The next morning brought Nicole's return with document disposal services to handle the paper elimination project safely and efficiently. Document disposal services who would shred 53 years of love letters without reading them first, missing treasures hidden in romantic correspondence they'd never understand. We'll start with the oldest letters, she announced. Get baseline estimates for disposal costs, then work through everything systematically. That's when I decided the time had come to show Nicole what she'd overlooked in her rush to eliminate worthless paper accumulation. Calm truth cuts deeper than loud accusation. Before anyone destroys anything, I said, I need to read you something Frank wrote. That might change your understanding completely. I selected a letter from Frank's business trip to Chicago in 1987, one Nicole had dismissed as routine correspondence without real value. This isn't just a love letter, I explained. Frank wrote about business opportunities, financial plans, important decisions he was making for our family's future. I began reading aloud Frank's description of investment opportunities he'd discovered, property purchases he was considering, financial strategy he was implementing for our retirement. Some distances heal more than apology. Paper clutter, I continued quietly, that documented every financial decision Frank made for 30 years of marriage. The letter contained specific details about stock purchases, real estate investments, insurance policies, bank account numbers that Nicole had never known existed. But there were more revelations in other letters. Frank had documented every major financial transaction in correspondence he knew I'd keep and preserve carefully. He wrote everything down in our love letters because he knew they'd be protected and saved forever, hidden in the last place anyone would look for financial record. Thomas arrived as I was reading Frank's letter about the property he'd purchased secretly in my name as anniversary surprise that became substantial investment over time. This is all documented? He asked, examining letters that changed everything about his understanding of our family's wealth. Every investment decision, every property purchase, every financial plan your father ever made is written in these love letters, I replied. Nicole's face went white as I continued reading Frank's descriptions of bank accounts, stock portfolios, real estate holding she'd never known existed, all documented in letters she wanted to throw away. The disposal services weren't needed anymore. These letters, family financial archive, disguised as romantic correspondence between devoted spouses. This wasn't about paper clutter or storage efficiency. This was about Frank's sophisticated documentation system for protecting our financial information. The silence that followed felt completely different from previous discussion about paper accumulation, this time weighted with respect rather than dismissal of worthless clutter. Nicole spoke first, her voice shaking. Virginia, I had absolutely no idea about any of this. Financial documentation? In the love letters, Frank was careful about privacy. I replied gently. He didn't trust banks or lawyers with all our information, so he hid everything in letters he knew I'd treasure forever. Thomas examined the correspondence, understanding finally dawning about his father's brilliant approach to financial record keeping and asset protection. He documented everything. In love letters? He asked, looking at papers with new appreciation for their dual purpose as romance and financial archive. He knew these letters would be read and reread, protected from damage, hidden from anyone who might want to steal our information. We spent the next hour going through letters that contained financial information mixed with romantic expressions, the most sophisticated filing system ever created by a man who understood security. Nicole apologized for calling the letters paper clutter, for assuming Frank had been simple romantic without complex financial planning abilities. I can see now how brilliant this was, she said, still visibly shaken, not just as love letters, but as family protection system. Frank was genius, with hidden documentation. Some objects hold memories, not value. We talked about going forward differently, about reading possession before discarding them, about respecting systems that represent generations of careful planning rather than simple, sentimental accumulation. I want to help organize this properly, Nicole said. Would you teach me which letters contain which types of financial information so we can protect everything? And I want to create backup copies, Thomas added. Scan everything for safety while keeping originals in their special storage system. The letter collection returned to its place of honor in my living room, no longer hidden, but openly treasured for its sophisticated dual purpose as love and legacy. Over the following months, our relationships improved, like well-written letters that grow more meaningful with time. Nicole started visiting to learn about Frank's documentation method rather than eliminate paper accumulation. Christmas that year felt like celebration. Nicole brought me archival storage boxes for protecting letters while keeping them accessible for reference. Thomas's gift was a fireproof safe for storing copies of the most important financial letters while keeping originals in your reading collection. If this story touched something familiar, may your next chapter be softer than the last. Your treasured correspondent matters regardless of others' opinions about modern communication method. Your right to maintain physical letters should be honored, not questioned. Real love recognizes different approaches to preserving important information. Real care examines contents before discarding seemingly outdated items. Real protection preserves wisdom rather than eliminating complex systems. Age brings appreciation for permanent record that younger generation may not recognize, but will value when they understand the security and comfort they provide. Sometimes the most valuable letters carry more than love. They carry family future, written by hands that understood how to protect both hearts and holdings for generations.